We're so happy to have Tess joining us today. Frode is going to be our moderator, and we know that Tess doesn't need any moderating, but when she starts to show slides, it's hard to see who's got their hands up. So he's gonna actually help her know when the questions start to come in. And usually there's lots of good questions.
Oh, great. And I'm going, I think it's going to go pretty quickly. Well, and then we can do questions afterwards too, obviously, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. It's an adventure.
Should we wait 2 more minutes? So we're five past the half hour or however it said. So Fabienne, how is the ACM presentation coming? Are you feeling confident? We hope.
It's moving along. You'll tell me on Wednesday, I guess.
Okay, I will do that. I was just talking to Dini about how after the ACM hypertext presentation, the next stage will be basically building on that, Fabienne. So that should make you less concerned about major changes, because what we've developed over the last 6 months or so has been really brilliant. So instead of going in a new direction, we can take some of that and finesse it. But anyway, we will get to that.
So major changes is not necessarily a problem. The problem is that when there is a deadline and presenting to people, the major change must not break everything. If it's major change and then it's all broken and then we get crazy idea on the way, it's whenever it comes, that's okay. It's really the big difference is like here. It's has to be working the way we expect it for a specific day. That's
exactly. So what I'm talking about is a more coherent development from the work we did last year. How that obviously there's been a lot of integration with how that fits what's happening for hypertext, and then how that will continue. So it's all very good, and I'm so grateful that Tess is presenting today, because we obviously are working on academic documents, and at least for me, I can get a bit dry with that. So with what Tess has been working on, maybe we can snap into some more color that could still also be relevant for academic documents moving forward. And we just hit 4:35. So Tess, over to you. And would you like me to interrupt you, or how do you want to do it if I see something that you don't see? Or would you like people to interrupt you, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah, if you want to sort of moderate that as I'm going, if a lot of people want to come in and ask questions, that would be wonderful. I want to give everyone a heads up that I just got a notice that Frode froze for a moment, and I got a notice that my connection was unstable, which seems to only be happening during these meetings in my house. So give me a heads up, shoot me a chat or something if I get bumped off, if something happens. Hopefully I'll be able to get through it without a problem.
And Ken is appearing with impeccable timing as always. And I'm going to now hand it over to Tess, who said that I should be, as the moderator, interrupting where appropriate. So Ken, also, if you have questions. Also, I sent you an email about accommodation here, Ken. So I don't know if you want to reply in the sidebar or whatever, but we hope to see you.
Yeah, I'll text you. Yeah, on the chat.
Cool. All right, over to you, Tess.
Thank you so much. So before I get started with the presentation, I want to tell you a little bit about myself, because I'm relatively new to this group and I don't know if everyone here was on the call when I first joined or not. My name is Tess Rafferty. I have written and produced on over 500 episodes of television. Also, as a novelist, I have written the Cat Kelly mystery series. And as an avid reader, I devour murder mysteries like they're pie the day after Thanksgiving. So about a year and a half ago, I started learning AI filmmaking, which made me really curious about other emerging technologies and how they were going to shape the future of how we enjoy entertainment. And then a year ago, I was at a friend's house and I tried his eye goggles and I saw the future. I didn't understand why all of our TV wasn't on these things right now. I saw so much potential, especially for my own book series, which had been under option for years, but had never made it to the TV screen. But when I tried the Apple Vision Pro, I thought my books weren't made for the TV screen. They were made for this. More about that later. Similarly, I met Froda at the beginning of the summer. I'm relocating to London, as we mentioned earlier, at the end of this month. And so a mutual friend had introduced us, just thought we should know each other. And as I was hearing more about his work and what you all do here, I again saw so much tremendous potential in what you're doing, not only as a reader, but as a writer too. And I had been in the middle of this months-long quest to try to find an LLM to solve a couple of different issues I found myself in need of as a writer, as I was working on my next book, and none of them were really doing the trick. But having sat in on these meetings now, I actually think the solution for what I'm looking for as a writer could be here. And I'll get to that in a minute. So when we discuss AI, we say we need a human in the loop. And I believe when we talk about these emerging technologies like VR, we need a creative in the loop, someone who is passionate about both sides and who can be the conduit and see where this can go and sort of like bring both sides together. And I want to be that person. So given my passion as a reader, as a writer, as a TV creator and viewer, this is the beginning of my vision for the future of text and beyond. And now I am going to show you my lack of proficiency by trying to share my screen. Oh, share. Here we go. Okay. Can we all see this?
Not yet.
Not yet.
You've probably picked you have different things you can click on to show from your interface. Pick the screen where your slides are showing up.
Yeah, I can't see anything missing here under options.
That's fine.
You're on a Mac, right?
Yes.
What about the big green share button? Do you have the same version of Zoom as I do? Do you have that button?
Yep, I'm on share. I've selected desktop 1.
Oh, you should. I don't think you should select desktop. You should do, yes, desktop 1. Sorry, that is exactly what you should do. I apologize. And is that not working?
It says I have to open my system settings.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
turn it off.
You have to let Zoom access the rest of your Mac, basically.
It just disappeared.
Uh-oh.
I think that's normal. Yes, it's turn it on and off again. Turn it off and on again, rather.
Yes.
Shall we start talking about economics when she comes back in and I'm completely surprised that she's interested in XR?
Actually, I had a hopefully she owns her laptop and everything else, but for the first time in my life, I have a Mac in my possession that I do not have admin control over because it belongs to the college. And I was in the classroom the other day, and I went to fire up the stupid software that's required to interface with the projectors, and it wouldn't let me because of the privacy settings, and I couldn't change the privacy settings because I didn't have an admin password. I was like, oh my God.
Tess, we can see that, darling. It's there.
Yes, we can see it.
So much.
Yes.
It's really a litmus test. You can be so technically proficient in so many areas of other things and then get thwarted by a Zoom. So apologies there for it maybe reboot and all sorts of things. So anyway, haha, we're in the this is my play on words. We're in the future of text. This is the future of Tess. So V1 writer. So as I mentioned, I have been looking for some sort of agentic software, some sort of LLM to take my body of work and help me search it better so that when I'm working on the next book in my series, I can figure out, have I used a character before? How is this pacing compared to other books that I've been working on? So the first vision I have for how I would use this technology as a writer is I would be able to index, search, and analyze my body of work. I could index character names, locations, murder methodologies, general crimes. In murder mysteries, a lot of times general crimes are part of the backstory. Part of how you get to the big crimes. Family trees in some cases. There would be characters. I could have a bio of the characters, a summary of their actions, when they were first introduced, subsequent book and page appearances. And I could also have something that would help me generate story outlines between books, so that I could compare and contrast the story structure between volumes, identify possible redundancies, and just know, this is just have a general outline, working outline in general that I can refer to as I'm working on the next book. Are there any questions about any of that?
Everybody seems happy.
Okay. So this is what I call writer 1.2. So before was what I want to do with my existing body of work. This is what I would want to do moving forward as I create more work. So my ideal software in this context, again through VR, and you can see the version of me using virtual reality that looked like the least pornographic anime I could make, right there with my AI. So in the new version of this, I would be able to, as I was working on a draft, I would be able to auto index characters, locations, any notes that I made, so that, we talk about turning the cube. I'd be like, okay, where are my characters? Or, okay, what locations do I use in this draft? What notes do I have that I want to resolve? It would generate a beat sheet while I was writing, so that at the end of every day's writing, I would have a summary of the events that have happened so far in this manuscript. It could identify previously used names and details, much like we get the little blue squiggle if there's two words together in a document. It would be able to say, like, hey, you've used this character before. Do you mean this person? And then we would have what I call seed mapping. And every writer's got their own version of this. I'm sure someone else uses the term seeding, but when I'm writing, if I'm writing a murder mystery storyline, if I'm writing another plot line, maybe it's for a red herring, I always talk about, like, oh, I have to go back and seed this earlier, or, oh, this would be a good place to seed this. And sometimes I put the details in, and sometimes I just put a general, like, come back to here, seed this here. It would be great if you could, as you're interacting with this, have a pull down menu to say just this. Okay, this is going to be a seed, or I need to fill, this is a seed. This is a seed for this. This is a seed for the murder mystery. This is a seed for the red herring, so that you could get a map of it too. You could view your manuscript as a map of all these things. This is where I seed the mystery. This is where I seed the red herring. This is where I need to go back and fill in these details. So I would love to see, I would, in three-dimensional virtual reality, I would love to see a version of that. And for every author, the needs might be different, but then they can customize it to fit how they work. And that's kind of the amazing thing about this is, this is something that I've been thinking about in these groups, and I've been thinking about as I kind of create this deck, and the ideas come to me in the middle of the night, and the ideas come to me as I'm working on it. But the ideas are kind of infinite, because then you get in and you start working on something and you come up with more. It would be great if this could do that. So in Writer 1.2, the virtual reality would also help me envision what I'm writing, right? We can interface with generative image apps to develop character proto, so that as I'm working, I have an idea, I have a perfect idea of what this character looks like in my head, because I've just generated an image of them. I could do floor plans for the buildings and the rooms I'm in. And then once I have a floor plan and I'm in the goggles, right, it can be as big as I need it to be. I can envision all of it while I'm actually writing it. I can also create worlds. If it's a science fiction world, what does that look like that you need to discuss? That you need to write about and describe. And you can be right there looking at it while you're also writing it. I think that also, this can help us in research, right? If I'm describing a Tuscan village, I'm going to reference Italy and wine a lot because all of my books are set in Italy. If I'm trying to describe a Tuscan village and I'm in the goggles doing my research, it's literally a window onto the world for the research. And then lastly, in this version, this will help us connect because I can connect to writers all over the world when I'm in there. It's a virtual writers room where we can participate, and we can participate literally in each other's stories, looking at all of them and discussing them and looking at them from all these different areas. We can look at the outline, we can look at the beat sheet, we can look at the seed map, as it were, and discuss and give each other ideas and feedback. Okay, so version 2 of how the potential I see for this technology is as a reader. And it's building on the experience that we already have in two-dimensional reading through Kindle and other apps like on iPads. And then just building that out. And I'm using real page examples from my book here so that you can see the real world application. If I write Minas Tintorella de Luna came on, you can hear that. You have the ability to click on it and listen to it. You can hear the correct pronunciation of different foreign language phrases. You can see the things we're talking about, whether it is a Caravaggio or the Teatro Farnese. Again, learn more about the Buffalo Soldiers and see a video on the various wines of that region. And then also, and I love this because I really could have used this when I was reading The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. You can have interactive wikis of characters and plot summaries with them so that you don't get confused from book to book, or even sometimes you get very deep into a book and you're like, I don't remember this character. Have we met them already? It's all very easy to remember who they are and where you saw them before without having to take yourself out of the book, and you can just sit back and really enjoy it. Okay. And finally, this is my vision as a viewer. And this is what really got me excited about this. This is what made me want a piece of $3,000 technology when I put the goggles on my head. Watching a scripted show via virtual reality headset can give people a unique way to experience the world of a show, not just the linear story, which they can also see, but they can fully immerse themselves in the setting, the characters, and also the fan community around the world. All right. This is imagine that this is moving, right? We've just found our dead body on the ground. You're watching the show. You can keep watching the action, or you can take time out and go on a walking tour of Rome. You can go view the Colosseum. You can you can learn how to make pasta. You can meet with other fans and talk to other fans in a social situation, or you yourself can actually interview the witnesses through chatbots, or do an interactive forensic search while you're asking questions, again, of a coroner who's being powered by a chatbot. Similarly, I just got really excited. You can learn how wine is made, take a tour of the vineyard. You could search the person themselves for clues. You could even buy the wine, because I'm always thinking, how do we pay for things? We pay for things by selling things. You can have in-app purchases to help fund the next generation of what we're doing. And speaking of funding, and this is the last part of my presentation, I just believe this has tremendous potential for existing franchises and brands that are out there to create fan communities, to create worlds where people can either watch the actual episodes on VR headsets. They can participate themselves in murder mysteries and games, almost like an escape room, that are created just for these franchises. They can spend time in the worlds that these shows are happening in. If it's Death in Paradise, they can be there in the Caribbean, on the bar, on the beach, and they can be talking to other fans. If it's something more traditional like Midsommar, they can be sitting there doing pub trivia with all of the other fans around the world and create their own teams from a community of people anywhere who want to enjoy this particular community. So I understand I don't always understand. I understand that I understand I don't know enough about the technology involved to know what's possible now and what might be possible in the future, but I do think I'm I do think that there's oh God, there's just so much fun to be had here. So that's my presentation.
Rhoda has his hands up.
Thank, yes. Dini, yeah, if you moderate, that would be great. Thank you, first of all. Where are you? Oh, yeah. Obviously, we're playing family squares here, so I had to look for you for a second. A comment and a question. The reason Lucas made so much money out of Star Wars was not the movies, it was the toys. And by the toys, we mean the full environments, like the rides and all of that stuff. So when someone cares about an environment, to want to be in it has been, for many franchises, demonstrably proved to be a very powerful thing. When you talk about the level of freedom you're talking about, of course, then you are literally changing the narrative. So I'm wondering what thoughts you might have on entering and leaving a narrative. And I will extend the question to talk about some computer games where things are happening in the world, whether you do something or not. Mm-hmm. So are you thinking primarily that if you go and learn how to make pasta, as you know, like an example, the coroner will still make things, or will the game, book, experience, theater pause? I'd love to hear more about that if you have thoughts, please.
I think it would pause. I think much like we interact with television today, right? We hit pause, we go do something, we can come back to that moment. We can also skip ahead if we want, right? The way we're viewing everything is on streaming. Very, very few things that we are watching are even live right now. So because of that, it feels like, number one, we're very conditioned to this is how we watch programming. That we're in control of when we pause, what we rewind to, what we skip ahead to. And so I don't think that interface would remain the same in this environment. So if I'm in the thing, we've just found the body, but oh wow, I really want to go over here and do a walking tour of Rome, then I can go do that as much as I want and then come back and see the rest of the scene play out.
Thank you.
All right. Do we just go in order? I think I'm seeing hands up. I think I'm seeing Brandel first.
Yeah, Brandel, please.
Cool. It's really funny that you sort of make the jump from sort of writing tool into murder mystery game. One of the first jobs that I had that I didn't just make up was designing a murder mystery game that links ideas of people to places, to objects in places and things like that wasn't played out in virtual reality, but in a hyper realistic kind of space using photogrammetry, and to kind of relate that back to like the construction of a story versus the exploration of an existing story is something that occurred as we were kind of trying to sketch it out, build the murder wall. I'm curious about one of the, so you're writing books, and I'm curious about the way that you sort of characterize the final stage of a book as kind of really a movie. I my experience with books is that there are a lot of sort of visually or conceptually unresolved details, and that the ambiguity is one of the greatest sort of features of it. Whereas, a film is something that sort of necessarily has to kind of construct all of the pictures and exactly what everybody looks like, all of those things. And so I'm curious, like, would you want all of your books to, I mean, aside from the sort of like, it is fun to make movies and there's a lot of money and glamour in it and stuff, but like, do you want all of your books to be movies, or are there other forms that could be sort of partially along that continuum, where you can kind of enrich or construct kind of worlds without that sort of resolution? I'm not sure. I'm curious what you'd like, or what you think a text could be, outside of merely just printed page versus film?
So, well, one of the things I'm always concerned about as a writer is, am I writing too much or too little description? And I think that sometimes with characters, I don't write a lot of description about my main character, and I write about her in the first person. And part of me, I think that's for a couple of different reasons. You don't describe yourself, right, when you're talking about yourself in the first person. You talk about what you see, but why would you talk about yourself? And sometimes I think I do want to allow for that sense of the reader sees themselves in that. They can see whoever they want to see in some senses, especially when we're talking about a main character. But if I'm describing a very real place, whether it's a scenery or um, an art, something like the Teatro Farnese or the Colosseum, or also sometimes with a home, you have to be really specific because when you're describing action later on, people need to know that's the only exit or how far is it to the front door. They need to feel whatever that urgency is. So it's always a balance as the writer. And I think that having something that can help me generate a physical floor plan and I could generate a physical floor plan now and my notebook's full of like different things I've sketched out like family trees and floor plans and things, but to be able to have something that's consistent and that I can kind of live in a little bit, right, and be in and walk around in, so to speak, I think would help me, number one, as a writer. As the reading experience, I don't want to give anyone, I don't want my books to play out like a graphic novel, for example, but I do want that support there for, again, historical real life buildings, different history events people might want to read more about or people might need clarification on. I think hearing a song is just wonderfully evocative. Hearing the correct pronunciation, I think, helps all of us. So if does that answer the question of kind of the balance?
Yes, I think so. I mean, and the point about writing versus reading is well made. That you want to have a ground truth that you're working from versus yeah. And the sort of point about graphic novels is interesting because of the differences that they do give and don't give versus just the written stuff. So yeah, thank you.
Interesting timing for me to be next because I got a few points here that Jonathan in his comments just changed, and I'll get to that in a moment. So for something like this, you probably need to start in a game world, just for the mechanics and just to be able to move around. To do anything like this on an individual level will be absolutely not very feasible. Even though, of course, we in the community would like it to be open, clearly. Now, many, many years ago in the DVD world, I had a notion that I actually submitted to the DVD forum of if you make a movie is scenes with shots in it, right? So imagine if you have a shot that you have 3 or 4 versions of. So every time you see the movie, it's slightly different. It can be the same angle, but it's just held differently. Or the character speaks the same line, but just with a slightly different intonation to keep it fresh. It comes from the joke of 2 people watching a movie, and one says, I bet you $5 that horse falls over. The guy says, okay, you're on. The horse falls, here's the $5. I said, I have to admit, I've seen the movie before, so have I. I didn't think the horse would be stupid twice, right? But with digital media, we can do this. And the reason I'm bringing it up is for 2 reasons. One is the Great Gatsby's narrator, which may not be reliable. The world can change. You can literally walk through the same normal looking house and the second time it's different. So that could be interesting. And that relates to another thing is when you watch a movie on an Apple TV or something now, you can do, what did they say? And it winds back a few sections, you get subtitles, right? So I'm thinking, Tess, you've talked a lot about context. Maybe you have time travel, but when you do time travel, there is an expectation that the reader needs more information. So if you go back, then they may give you another bit of context to the scene. It's not just a reverse. And finally, we went to to see Hampton Court with the auntie the other day, and some of us had the big headphones to do the tours. I found them quite obnoxious because they take me out of the space. First of all, they're bulky. Secondly, I can't hear the room as well. So I was just thinking, and a little notepad, because they don't say much, might actually be better. Right? You read 2 seconds of this room and go on. So I'm wondering, and here's finally a question. In what you're talking about, might the character actually be reading literal words as well when they go through your rich environments? Thank you, and over.
Well, I think I think the great thing is the possibilities don't have to be confined to either or. You brought up subtitles. Some people prefer to watch it dubbed in another language if that option's available to them. Some people prefer the subtitles. Some people still like to read books. And I never thought I would enjoy the Kindle experience. And the minute I got a Kindle, I never looked back. Now if somebody gives me an actual physical book, I buy it on Kindle immediately because that's now become my preferred reading experience. So I think that it's all people can kind of buy in on what level on different levels that they enjoy, if that makes sense. Like I don't think it has to be confined. If people want to read what you're saying, if people want want to rewind and go, I need more information on this, they can do that. If people want to watch it straight through linearly and just have, I mean, remember that the experience of this, if I'm only watching Brokenwood. I'm literally just trying to scroll through every show on Acorn and BritBox over here. If I'm watching Death in Paradise, right, which has a lot of beautiful scenery and great shots, if I'm only watching an episode of that in virtual reality, that is an amazing experience because you're seeing the ocean and the palm trees and the mountains and all of that, you're taking all of that in along with the events of the show.
Thank you. Mark?
Two quick things. One, an observation, and one a question. So I'll do the observation but pass. I'm doing some interesting work on the side of people doing some interesting work with the AI in terms of integration with note-taking tools. What's proved quite interesting there is actually letting the AI make notes for itself, because despite our magical thinking about how AI works, in many ways it isn't that clever behind the screen. So it doesn't think like we do, for instance. So encouraging it to note things it's found, so that basically each session it has to learn from zero most of the time. So that could be quite interesting in the context of your Imagine tool to help you. In other words, it's not going to get all the answers for you, but you can, in a sense, have a dialogue of indicating the things that you sort of want to learn about, so that it can support you. Because I don't think, in the mind's eye, it's going to find all these things you want. I suspect it doesn't, because language is so flexible. There's a time in this. Was someone mentioning a time, or was it a time? We tend to pick that up very, very quickly. It's sort of less clear cut without lots of training than AI necessarily does that. And that's not a critique. It's just a natural limitation and something to be aware of, so that one doesn't engage in too much magical thinking. Oh, it can do it all for me. The other question that I had in mind is, or the question I had in mind is, the degree to which putting all this extra stuff into the story robs the reader of agency. Part of the enjoyment of reading often is to actually create pictures, in the way they say, things are so much better on the radio because the pictures are much more vivid than watching the show. So if I watch the movie, I get to watch what the director or what the studio wants, and maybe I get to watch the director's cut, which is the cut the director wanted. But at maximum, maybe I only get 2 goes at that. There's lots of other story. As a reader, you can sort of fill that out for yourself. And also, if the characters are monologuing or just doing an aspect of the story you don't find interesting, you can just skim read through. You haven't lost anything from the story. And it doesn't mean the writing is bad or something. It's just something you with time, especially if you using a particular author, I find after a while, okay, they're doing this thing. Yeah, I'm really interested in that. I'll just read very quickly through the next thing because I'm interested in the story. I'm not necessarily interested in that bit. I think that's harder to do because the more you make it visual in front of us, where Rob divination. And I hasten to add, I raise this not as I ask a question not in terms of as a Boolean, zero sum win lose thing, but just wondering if the degree of trade off between adding this richness to actually the richness that you offer in just the narrative form of the writing. Thanks.
Well, I no, there's a lot there. So I want to respond to your comment first, which is number one, that's extremely helpful. And, it is that thing that we're all reckoning with, that, AI is not the genie we think it is a lot of the time. And that's sort of what I've discovered. But for example, because a lot of the LLMs I was using, you could only upload a PDF. I couldn't get an accurate, the LLMs couldn't even give me an accurate word count for the books to compare and contrast, which is crazy because I've got that in Word. So the idea that, yes, thank you, Fabian. So the idea that I can somehow even just can I upload a Word doc to the Cube? Because that would be a start in the right direction for me to be able to have something that can even interface with that level of data that we've had at our fingertips for 20 years. So it is a little bit of, I meant to say at the beginning, some of this is a little blue sky, but we're kind of living in a blue sky world right now where things we didn't think were possible are becoming possible daily. So to that extent, and it is going to have to be some self-indexing, some AI generation searches and AI generated searches and finding where that balance is. But again, even just being able to have a drop down menu where I can right click and write something like this is a note. Okay, this has been highlighted as a note. And then at the end of the day, I can see all the notes as they go throughout my manuscript and really be in there with that is helpful as well. Then to address your question and comment about agency, I mean, people can still read books, right? Like there's nothing to, if somebody is like yourself wants that experience, they can still pick up a book if they want. Just the same as when I'm on my Kindle, I can choose to search the Kindle manuscript. I can, click on a word to get the definition or go to a Wikipedia page. It's very rudimentary. I'm proposing a next level version of that here, but it's still an opt-in. I'm not advocating that we give people pictures while they're reading. I'm just saying if you're curious, and I'm a curious person who tends to go down rabbit holes sometimes when I'm reading something, like now I need to know more about that. If you're curious what this looks like in real life, you can click on that. If you're curious what this sounds like, you don't have to Google it. You can literally play it while again, you're in this immersive experience. This isn't to rob anybody of what level of interactivity they want or don't want. This is to say, we have this amazing technology. What all can we offer someone who is reading in it?
It's important to ask these questions, but of course we have to remember not to be apologetic. Just like when we went from painting to photography or books to movies, they will remove, they will add, and we need to have the dialogue, but just really, really important. It's not, it's going to miss this. Just a quick question. Ken, did your hand go off and come on again? Because I thought you were first. Okay. Rob, if you don't mind, we'll do Ken because he was next and then you. Is that okay? Thank you.
I put my hand down because I thought you were going to call me, and then I realized.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Two things. One, this is an observation, absolutely not a criticism at all, an observation that baked into everything you're doing is that it is privileging viewing by a single person. And so therefore, in my mind, in terms of a user experience, this does seem to be more like the historical use of the book than the movie, because movies took off because the Lumiere brothers put people in a whole room together and everybody was having that group experience. Again, that's not a criticism because there's something wonderful about the solitary experience of reading a book, and I can put it down and I can pick it up and I can think about it. And I think what you've created seems in spirit more like that because I am going on my journey and maybe I'll go stop and make some pasta, etc., which is kind of more like my experience when I'm with a book than when I'm with a movie. And the other thing I wanted to say was that, and again, this is not a criticism, but at NYU, we've been making VR films for many, many years. And one of the things that we discovered that's very challenging about them is one of the great things about a movie or about a play is that proscenium. And the fact that you get to use montage and I can cut from one point of view to another. And there are all these challenges in, okay, I'm just literally in this world now and I don't get to have that visual, subjective, extra channel of communication. So it's different, but I wouldn't say that, oh, that's a limitation of the proscenium. I think the proscenium is a very, very powerful tool that's enabled lots of really great new styles of visual storytelling. I just wanted to make sure that that got mentioned.
Yeah, I mean that's an you bring up an interesting point, and I don't know what the montage is like. Our brains are used to watching certain things and then watching montages. So if I'm watching something and it feels very immersive, and then I cut to a scene that's mostly, a two shot between people, or is a montage to your point, am I going to bump on that or not? Or is it going to be I'm very used to going back and forth between these worlds and it's just the next generation of it. I don't know what that's like. My friend whose goggles I've borrowed, he just sometimes, because there's not enough content that makes use of the technology, sometimes he just watches regular movies in it, and I don't get the sense that it's weird for him or not. But we're all going to adapt to things, um, at our own pace and to our own proclivities.
I guess my point was that if I'm putting on a headset and I'm watching a movie in my headset, I'm watching a movie. If I put on my headset and I'm wearing one of these things and the whole world is around me, then I'm immersed in a world. But the fact that I happen to be wearing a headset, if the content was a movie and movies are largely built in the editing, that's still a movie. That's,
Yeah.
that I would say I'm on that side of the very big line at that point.
Just a really brief thing. If you haven't seen the 3D stereo videos on the Apple Vision Pro, it really feeds this particular discussion because some cuts work, some shots don't work. It's very different from what I expected. Very well worth watching. And you still have framing because you have two eyes. Rob, thank you for your patience. You are next.
I feel like I've got to do a montage here because so many ideas have been floating around. I'm not going to be able to chase them all down. It's like I got a room full of butterflies. Uh, Aside from the fact that I have a daughter named Tess, I'm very interested in the writing career. Uh, and I guess I wanted to say that I'm working on the fourth in a series of thrillers. And in this book, I decided because of this group to give my young one protagonist a headset, a very advanced one, by the way.
Mhm.
Uh, I used to have it here. Anyway, the book is in final edit and it needs a cover image. But this discussion gives me a lot of ideas. When I was younger, I was experimenting a lot with technology, and now I find that I have trouble remembering from one book to the next what the hell happened. I'm not a big fan of AI. I think Luke Julia had said there's no such thing, and he works on it. Uh, so I guess I wanted to say that the idea of I would love to have a conversation with you sometime uh, about the place of writing in this new technology environment that we're in, and how we're going to adapt to it. I'm thinking about, speaking of the Lumieres and Ken's comments, really important here. Um, you know, when the train first came out at the people, everybody screamed and ran out of the room. We have a learning process where we learn, and I used to teach film theory, so um, we had to learn the grammar. We had to make the grammar and then learn how to respond to it. And that was a lot of work, but everybody was willing to do it because the stories were great. So I think that the novel did the same thing. And I used to say that the novel responded to the transportation modality of the time. And in the 19th century, it was the train. So I think about the beginning of Middlemarch, where the train is coming into the town and you see the town on the horizon and the town gets closer and closer. It's a long train ride, leisurely read. Now, airplanes. You got to read the whole book on the airplane. So movies are like an airplane ride. Anyway, I want to pursue this further,
Sure.
and the techniques of remembering and re um, configuring your notes, so that I've been trying to use author for that, and it doesn't do it. It doesn't do what I need.
Y-
So,
Um, yeah, I mean I mean that's sort of what I had a couple of people make smart suggestions who work with a lot of this stuff, and none of it really did what I needed it to do. I guess, just to your point about creativity is that, or AI and what it means for writing is that, I mean, as you're con I when I started doing AI filmmaking, I had never felt more creative because not only did I have the agency to seed my ideas into fruition, I was making all the choices and I had no boss. My only limitation was what I could or couldn't get out of the technology that day. I don't work with LLMs that much because the things that I need something to do, generally speaking, I don't need, what they're good at, I don't necessarily need. But, I also have a view of, as someone who's gotten, paid my whole professional life to write, I feel like, look, there's LLMs are going to be used by people who never wanted to pay me and were always looking for a way to pay me less, and
mhm.
who are going to be content with whatever they get out of it, which is can be bad to generic to okay or whatever. And we also as a society, like, let's not kid ourselves that I hate to look, some of my best friends have written Hallmark movies, and I would write a Hallmark movie tomorrow if somebody hired me to write one. But like, some people find comfort in something that's formulaic and not particularly outside the box. So I think that moving forward, we will still continue to find comfort in things that are really creative. Like, we will still, there are those of us who will be drawn to new ideas and something creative, and there will be people who will be drawn to, the things that seem more formulaic and that are more generic. And all we can do is what's going to serve me best and what I want to do. I guess does that.
Yeah, yeah. I just find that AI is rather stupid,
Sure.
and doesn't give me what I want. Even the Google AI that gives me summaries, it often just totally off track. I have to do my
Yeah.
own research still. But having something that would coordinate the research and tell me when the hell this character appeared, and say,
Yeah.
um, just very quickly, the editor of the last book said that there's a character that's kind of a new character in this book, and there's a disaster, and everybody has to leave. The house blows up, and they said her parents are going to be, crazy trying to figure out what happened to her. And I said, no, I said that the mother's an invalid and the father's out of town. So no, that's not enough. So
Yeah.
something that would help me coordinate that kind of stuff would be useful and possibly interesting, but I don't know if the AI can do that. So I don't know what you use, but I'm kind of intrigued.
Oh,
Thank you, Rob. Peter.
Okay. Tess, I was wondering, did you take any inspiration from real world theme parks like Evermore? And I'm dropping a link to a very good article describing that park. Basically, it had long form stories running and encouraged cosplay of guests. Um, and also, I was wondering, how would you handle time and chapters if you start having multiple people sharing an experience? Since one of the principles of cyberspace is the idea that the environment keeps running whether you're there or not, in this case, you'd want to have a way to go back to chapter one, or maybe have people start in chapter three. And would you have each person's time be running differently than the people around them so that they might be sharing the environment? However, the time dependent elements would play differently depending upon whether they were in chapter one versus chapter two while still sharing the same restaurant? Or would you set it up so that you'd be able to know that at 8 p.m. Eastern time, the first hour was running, and then it would replay at 9 p.m. for people in the next time zone over, and then it would reboot the events at 10 p.m., sort of like Alien Earth runs 3 times back to back.
So I'm sorry if this wasn't clear. I see the reading experience as solitary, right? Which isn't to say that you can't end up on a forum with other people, that you might not have that, but I think the reading experience is solitary where people are reading it in themselves. Regarding the TV view, that we'll call it TV, even though it won't be TV at this point, but regarding the viewing experience of a show, of a program, I guess it is. I think I envision it that communal spaces, right? Whether it's a pub or an Italian cafe or a beach bar, whatever these communal spaces are that you can then interact with other community members are are a separate space. They're a separate space in real time. People drop in and out and are able to interact in real time. I see the program as the program that you watch and you can stop and start like you would at home on your actual television set, except you're watching it on your virtual reality headset, so that you are the one, you're not watching it with a group of people. It is not playing it continuous. It is on demand for you, the viewer. Having said that, because this is a community and because we have the technology, you can also do watch parties. So if it's a popular TV show, I mean, even, whatever, if it's a popular TV show, you can do like the premiere or each week, Game of Thrones used to be Sunday nights or something. So you can do a watch party, like watch it whenever you want. But if you want to participate in the community, if you want to be able to chat while it's going on, we're doing it Sunday night at 9 p.m. or something. Watch the new British Baking or watch the new Ted Lasso or whatever the thing is in the zeitgeist. So, and also, and this is something we've been doing since the pandemic, and I think Amazon has this technology. You can create your own watch party. I mean, providing, like, the barrier to entry is that not everyone has $3,000 to drop on these goggles, and I know some of the other models are less expensive, but as more people get them, it's sort of like, if you're separated from someone, if by distance, you guys could watch this together. You can create a watch party among your friends who are all fans and viewers. So I think you can. I don't think it's something that's playing continuously. I think, in terms of the linear program of it.
Okay. Also, earlier I dropped a link to a program called Fantasia Archive that's a database designed for helping authors do world building. So you can scroll back and find that. You might find it useful.
I'm so intimidated. I haven't been able to look at any of the comments in the chat at all, and now they're up to 60. So I don't know if I'll get to any of them today. I'm so overwhelmed.
So Tess and everyone, to remind you, we use LLMs to summarize the meeting. I'm saying that just because you've been talking about LLMs and all of that stuff. However, at the bottom of each record, all the links all are extracted and put in there. So it is a good resource to go back. And when someone wants to, they can also upload slides and all kinds of resources. Tom.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up some of the challenges of narrative in this space. I'm reminded, and I've dropped some links into the chat, of Scott McCloud's TED Talk from like 20 years ago when he was talking about the movement of comics from a paper medium to a digital medium and how people were trying to figure out how to leverage that. And he said, with CD-ROMs, they were like, okay, we can just put these, side tracks that, more context, and you can go click on this and then it takes you over here. He said that broke the narrative flow of the comic because you have to go in a certain direction. And part of a writer's craft and part of a photographer's craft is establishing frames around the narrative to guide the reader in that way. And so I think one of the dangers of just having an open environment or having an environment like that is that you lose that frame and people will get lost. And so I would, in terms of constructing narratives and things like that, I think that's something that has to be looked at very carefully. And there's a lot of different ways to think about that. I dropped an article in there from, I forgot his first name, Alex McDowell, about his creation, world building strategies and things like that, which he used for Minority Report, and how that was different from the traditional narrative process. But there they had a narrative, a bare bones narrative of the Philip K. Dick story, but it was a short story, so there was a lot of room to bolt on other things around that narrative. So that's a real challenge. I think we're used to thinking in a linear narrative because of books on the one hand, but at the same time, that's also how we tell stories. And so when you start to mess with that flow, you're going to run into some challenges because it messes with your ability to contextualize things. So just wanted to throw that up there.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Oh, you have a comment.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tess, you froze. Please.
No, I guess it's funny, like, in a sense, and again, we can all.
I guess since I can see the rest of you, she's the frozen one, right?
Yeah, she's frozen.
The frozen. Oh, she's coming back, I think.
I don't.
We lost you. We lost you. Please step back. We didn't hear you until from when you started replying to Tom.
No, I know it is like my Zoom becomes haunted on my right now. It only happens on this chat. So, um, you know, sorry, now I'm both freezing in speech and in my connection. In a sense, what I'm proposing is the height of distracted viewing. But what I've come to realize is that we're already in distracted viewing. How many times are we watching a TV and we're on our phones, we're doing the dishes, we're talking, my husband and I, sometimes it takes us 2 hours to get through an hour of television because he keeps commenting on everything that we're watching throughout. I don't necessarily always enjoy it. And I have to kind of say, like, hey, listen, this is a movie I really want to see sometimes. I've never seen it, so let's just, try to enjoy it as it is. But also, that's where we kind of are as a society. So yeah, in a sense, this is interfering with the narrative, but it's sort of also a natural progression. There's some people who won't even question this sort of distracted viewing because it's all they're used to and it's all they're growing up with, for better or for worse. I don't put a judgment on it. It just sort of is, I guess, if that answers the question, or I guess just to further build a yes and onto your comment, Tom.
Thank you. Any further from you, Tom, or can we go to Dini?
I won't monopolize the floor. Go on, Dini.
Okay.
So one of the things we've been doing for the past year and a half is talking about the features of VR, XR environments. And we spent a lot of time in year one kind of mapping this out, looking at even some older research that talked about VR and what it can do. And several features jumped out at us. First is agency, giving you agency inside this environment. Another one is interactivity, being able to do something, right? Participate in something, make changes, cause something to happen. And thirdly, it's immersion, right? There's actually something like 20 features, but those are the three that we just kept coming back to. And so I spent a lot of time in my digital storytelling class looking for VR stories that make me feel like I'm doing these three things. And there's so few of them. In fact, I think one of the closest ones that I've seen where I'm still not able to do anything, but the immersion is so well done, is a work called On the Morning You Wake to the End of the World. You probably know that one, Tess.
No, I've
It's
never heard of it.
it's based on a true story. There was and I think it was in year January 13th, 2018, residents of Hawaii received a emergency message that ballistic missile threats were coming to Hawaii, were inbound. And they had 38 minutes before they realized that was a false alarm. And so this environment, this VR environment captures the stories, real stories of the people as they thought they were going to die. And what happens in this environment is you're right there inside of it. Cars are going by you. You're right next to someone who's going down into a tunnel. It's well done, but you're essentially an NPC, right, in a game. You're not able to do anything. I've yet to see any environment that actually encapsulates the player in something that's visceral. There's a lot of games out there where you're, shooting things, zombies, monkeys, whatever it is, these meta games that are so goofy. But there's not really been an intellectual story like that one where I'm able to change that course of nature, that course of the plot line. And that seems to be a hallmark of what we want to do in these environments. I don't want to watch a movie in VR. It makes no sense to me unless I'm doing something like watching it in a watch party. By myself, it makes no sense. I'm just watching it. And maybe the sound is better, but not really, right? And so what I want to do is be inside that space and do something. Bandersnatch, which was advertised as this cool new invention, wasn't cool and wasn't a new invention, right? We've been doing this interactive storytelling for 30 plus years, right? It was just new on Netflix. And all of us in the field, in ELO field, were just like, nah, that's not so fun. That's kind of goofy. But if you could take something like that and actually be in that environment where that is happening inside. And to address Tom's comment about trivial and non-trivial activity, Janet Murray addresses this in the Hamlet on the Holodeck book, in which she argues back in 97 that interactive media will never be interesting because of the problem with non-trivial activity, right? As soon as we know we're turning a page of a book, it breaks the concentration and the immersion. But what she didn't anticipate was the other aspects of immersion that non-trivial activity doesn't seem to interfere with. Because any student of mine that plays games are so hyper focused on the game, even though they're doing these really amazing these actions with their controllers and talking with their mates while they're playing. So non-trivial activity has nothing to do with it. It's the way we structure the immersion, the other aspects of immersion that Murray discounts or doesn't even address. One of the problems with Murray, and I'll say this on record, is that she was not really a user of VR or interactive media. She was watching people doing it. But when you're actually involved in this, you can start to see that there's attributes of these environments that escape the notice of traditional literary people. And this is what I think you're trying to get to yourself, Tess, is what is it about VR that makes it different than a novel, reading a novel, and makes it different than watching a film? And I would argue it's this ability to immerse the reader right inside the environment, but also where you give them the agency to do something in that. And I'll stop there.
Well, I think I approached it, and my understanding of the thesis statement of this group, right, is it's sort of like, what can you offer people? You have this technology, you have something that we never needed a typewriter, we never needed a word processor, we never needed a computer. We had our we had a pencil and a piece of paper, right? We always have been able to write. How do we blow this out? What features can we offer people that's new, that makes their lives more interesting or better, or solves a problem that they're having as a writer, as a reader? And then, to your point as a viewer, I don't want to seem so naive. Like, I know that there's been virtual communities online for decades. I know that there's, in GTA, for example, you can play the game, or you can go into a movie theater, you can go to a shooting range, you can do different activities. But we haven't brought this to a mainstream audience. And I think that there's a mainstream audience who would really get into this. And again, not everyone, and not everyone will like the same things in this environment. But
I don't disagree with you at all. I'm not pointing my finger at you. I'm
no,
just
no,
saying
no, I don't think you are.
Ryan
Yeah.
Seven had no idea what the possibilities were. I mean, she did the best she could and made some great strides in the literary theory part of this. But those of us that have been playing with this stuff for a long time read what she was saying and said, wait a minute, there's non-trivial activity becomes very trivial once you become accustomed to it. I mean, when you play Unravel, for example, on a controller, there's 17 different actions you can do on the controller, which is pretty severe, right? It's a lot. But once you start playing with it and you get used to them, it becomes so trivial. You don't have to think about it. But the first time you try to play Unravel,
Yeah.
17 different things on a controller is very non-trivial, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay, sorry, I'm through.
Fabian.
Thank you. So I'm not an author, so it might make no sense. But I was wondering if, and some of us who have been, who heard me comment a few times will be a bit bored, I guess, by this. But I suggest not to wait for any of us developers to implement your ideas, and to do it however you can. Namely, that if you have a wall, then stick post-it on it. On the floor, you put a doll house and actual dolls, you put a timeline, you do everything with literally whatever materials you have. And also it means some of us here, there are at least 4 professional VR developers. We can say, yes, that's realistic, or that's maybe in 5 years, 10 years and everything. But the closer you can try to get the idea of the environment you wish you had, then the more precisely we can estimate how feasible that is, or the timeline. So I'm wondering basically if you've tried like a reverse murder wall, where instead of like solving what the problem is or who the murderer is, as an author, like you just throw everything you have, like a scarf or a photo, a drawing, literally anything, and then eventually imagine how it would be if it were to be virtual and to have some of the feature you described.
Well, that's what this is. I mean, I've done all those things. I've have time, I have timelines, I have family trees, I have character lists, I try to create beat sheets. It's just all, I've got 6 books, or I'm working on the sixth book. It gets time consuming, and it gets um you know unwieldy, because I'm going back and forth between documents sometimes, and it's not a perfect science, so to speak, in terms of like, from book to book, my lists of beat sheets, my lists of characters. And living in the year 2025, it seems like there should be a better solution. Right? Like, technology is solving our problems every day and making things easier. And there should be a solution here. That's not me going through different documents for 6 different books, or doing a word search on big manuscripts and having to go into the document each time. But, if there was one place it was all uploaded, where I could index it, where I could search on them all at once, where I could compare and contrast them. And again, I belong to an AI group that meets once a week, and everyone's got a different background, and we use different tools, and we kind of share our knowledge about what we're using and how we're using it. And in theory, what I need to do, according to a couple of people, should be there. It just hasn't really, it doesn't really work yet. So I guess that's my thing is I know how to do it on my own in like a very lo-fi way, but it's just like this is why I would use a VR headset to write as opposed to the way I write now. And if a VR headset couldn't offer me more than what I'm doing now, then I really wouldn't use it. I guess that's the question I'm trying to answer. Why would I use a VR headset to write?
So there are many things. Fabian, you're done or not? Sorry, your hand is still up. Okay. I have some questions or comments on the earlier, but since you're mentioning now suddenly in a good way authoring, and since Rob earlier alluded to trying to do stuff in author and it didn't work, what we're doing next in the Sloan project is even more focus on authoring. So in the coming weeks, this will be a very, very pertinent discussion, exactly what you're talking about, whether you're an academic or writing fiction or whatever you're writing. To have better means to knowing where your stuff is, what stuff changes over time and so on is really, really interesting, important, and valuable. So that was really good timing. There will be more on that later. So that was just on that little last bit there. So first of all, if there's something specific, Tess and Rob, you want, send me an email. Maybe I can do it in author. Maybe we can do it in the Sloan project. Maybe we can't do anything and it becomes an article for the book. But as teachers constantly say, if it's important to you, write it down. I really want to see it. Dini wants to see it. Fabian probably wants to see it, right? So here's the other thing. The Apple Vision Pro 180, 360, not sorry, 360 stereo movies, fixing my note there. Some of them I would say are absolutely amazing, especially the music ones. They are immersive in every sense, especially the Metallica ones. Not everybody likes the music, but the way they film some of it, you are there. Well, at least I feel I was there, even if it's actually black and white in the beginning. So that is an interesting thing in itself because it exists. So if you have access to a Vision Pro, watch all of them. They are really worth learning from. Secondly, my beautiful boy Edgar, he calls watching something watching. He has no concept of the difference between a movie or a TV show or YouTube. There are different qualities, different lengths. It's just watching. It's interesting to see the language. He doesn't say, can we see something on TV or can we go to the movies? No, I want to watch. It's been genericized, just like a coach and horses became a coach, right? But then my last comment and question really is, what do we mean now by narrative and what do we want it to mean? Because there are macro and micro narratives. There have been games, and I remember a Star Trek game from many, many years ago. I was in a tunnel, someone was shooting at me, lasers going over my head. There was almost no story, but there was a story. It was a micro story of surviving that. So there is a story arc, there's episodical stories. Obviously, you guys know this better than me. I'm just reflecting that when you change media, you will change control over the scales of the stories. And that becomes very, very interesting because sometimes you want something entirely passive. Reading is passive. I'm just expecting faces to explode because, of course, reading is not passive, but it is passive in the sense that you have very little control of how you move through it in a traditional book. You know, of course, in hypertext, which is a large part of our community, you have a different kind of control, a different narrative set of issues. Mark here knows an incredibly much about the early history of that, which is an important history because we're dealing with getting lost and so on. And the funny thing about engagement is if you read a book, it is eminently possible when you get a bit tired to just skip a through paragraph. Your eyes read it, but it doesn't go in. But if you do that in a game, you're probably going to end up dead or walking into a wall. I'm not at all, running this future of text stuff, I'm not at all saying that games are better, more immersive, or richer than text. Absolutely not. But I think that what Tess is moving into now with these different levels, so when you move in and out of it, is something so new. We can learn from the past, but we just need to be honest with, just like Fabian says, let's just test different aspects of it. Let's just build what we can, whether it's analog or digital, or Brandel sitting on the moon. Brandel.
Um,
Whoa, that was Tess scratching out a bit. Hang on, let's see if Tess comes back.
Oh,
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 you're
We got you
scratching out a bit. Please repeat, Tess.
I didn't say anything actually. I was just sitting here waiting for Brendel.
All right, great.
um,
Brandel.
on the 180, 360, all of those things, you can actually make those things yourself now and put them together on the web as well as in other applications and things like that for the low price of, I think it's $27,000. You can buy an Ursa Cine Immersive. I don't know, Ken, if you've got one in the lab, but it's very exciting. It's well worth having a look at it at some point. Um, but even just
Do
the
it on
action
this,
cams.
Brandel. You
Well,
can do it on this. The quality is fantastic. I'll talk off.
oh yeah, but you can do actual Apple Immersive and all of the APMP and things like that, and as well as the 360. So you can actually put a 360 video up or a still that is a video, things like that. So yeah, really interesting to really start building and authoring and playing with those things to understand what they are and what they do to your narratives and stuff like that. I actually just put my hand up because Jonathan put his meat hand up and then did put his yellow one up, and so I wanted to act as a proxy for that. So please.
I'll give it over to Jonathan, but because of what Brandel says, I film most of my videos now stereo, almost everything. About half of it is interesting in the headset, the other half isn't. And of course, when you film it with quote unquote just an iPhone, you tend to view it in a frame, which is really interesting. So it adds a real sense of depth in many cases without needing to be the 180 or whatever it is. So we have more media now. This is one, this is another. And then when you have it 3D, very often it's actually worse, depending on how it's filmed. So there's going to be an entire range of art coming out of this. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up, Randall, and I fought you back with an iPhone. Jonathan.
Okay, yeah, sorry, it's not recognizing my hand signals, whereas I think it's meant to. But anyway, yeah, Tess, really fascinating concepts there, and they relate quite closely to the thing I'm working on at the moment. So I just wanted to make a point, which may seem rather kind of logical point, but I think it's actually really crucial to your idea. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. So a scenario might be, just to take one very specific example, you might be reading a book or something, and at some point you want to find out more about a particular character, let's say, or something like that. I mean, let's just take a simple example like that. I would say you've got to be, I would say it's tempting to think that that means something more objective than it actually does. And what I'd say is this, that all you can ever do is find out about your state of mind at a particular point in reading the book. And that is perhaps what an application of this kind should be doing. Because suppose you're, just to take an example of a character, your knowledge about the character changes throughout the course of a book. And it's only in rather simple cases that you're building up information, objective information, which then at the end of the book reaches a kind of peak. And so at that point, you might be able to say, this is everything that you learn about this character at the end of the book. Whereas I would say, first of all, even in such a simple book, you probably don't want to know all about the character at any point of time. What you want to do is say, I'm here, I've read up to this point, I want to know, compressed, what I know at that point in time. So that's a sort of practical.
It sounds like you're saying you want a no spoilers function.
Sure, but I'm saying
Yeah.
something which is subtly different from that, but is I think the real logical nub of it, which is all that an app like this can do and all it ever should do is show you snapshots of your mind at particular points when reading the book. So let's say okay. So let's take a sort of more complicated example, which makes it sort of clearer. Suppose it's a book, mystery or whatever it is, where you learn something about someone and then later you find out that it's wrong or contradicted or something like that. So logically there are different characters. There's the one that you thought it was and the one that it that you thought it was later, and you never find out what the actual character is. All you've got is tracking, changing ideas about this person in time. And the same obviously goes for all other aspects of your app, such as visuals and so on. It's like, whose visuals are these? Are these objective? Now, of course, in a lot of stories, they're near enough objective that you could draw such a thing. But logically, all it is snapshots of one person's point of view at one person's particular point in time. This is the reader's point of view.
No, I think it's a great, it would have to be a key design feature, because to your point, you're absolutely right. If if the character of Chloe gets introduced and I'm like, have I seen Chloe? And I click on the name to see, like, has she been in the story earlier? Who was she? Well, it doesn't do me any good if it's like, either A, Chloe is the murderer in book 4, like that ruins the ending for people. Or if it says, oh, Chloe appears in books 1 through 5, well, then I know she's going to live in book 3, right? So I think that's a very that's a really key point that would have to be included if we were designing this interface. It would absolutely have to be like, you can't know anything beyond this page about this character. It's all anything that's happened before.
Sure.
I think that's a really key point.
Sure, but the wider point, which may sound a bit laborious, sorry to interrupt, but may sound a bit laborious, but the point it touches on all aspects of everything about this is that there is no, the fact that I can maybe look ahead, that in effect I'm cheating with a plot spoiler or something by you revealing something at the end. That in itself is just a special case. There is no objectivity beyond that. You're changing state of mind as you're reading the book. These characters don't have a real backstory. There is no wider world beyond what is presented in the book. And this becomes obvious when you try to kind of render it or something, because obviously decisions are having to be made about how to render all of the details that are not shown. And I mean, also, if you really want to get into it, that you could have you could show different people's point of view at a particular point in the book, different characters' point of view. There's different versions of objectivity and so on. Now, you probably don't want to get into that, but from a user,
I just want to ask you a question, because I'm not sure I'm understanding what the comment is beyond the characters and potential, what we know in the book up until that point. I'm not insinuating that people should see what a character looks like. That's for me as a writer, not for the readers.
Sure.
When I say that, like, you can hyperlink to a song or a place, it's only for things that exist in the real world, to give people, it's not for anything that would be subjective to the reader's mind.
Right. Okay. I get you. Yes.
I'm just trying to understand when you're talking about consciousness, I'm just trying to understand, outside of potential plot spoilers, what you mean specifically about things being subjective to the consciousness in the book.
Okay. I may have misunderstood part of the point of your concept. I was thinking you'd substantially be able to see content that is effectively referenced within the world of the book itself.
Yes, but only content that exists outside of the book, in the real world. Only concrete examples of, if I make up a fictional town, you can't click on that in the book. If I reference Washington, D.C., you could click on that in the book,
I'm with you. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do both.
Yes. I mean, when we're being paid to develop this, we can make all sorts of options.
Okay, so sure. So some of what I'm saying does not in that case apply. Sure, understood.
I don't think so. But that's why I wanted to make sure. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page about because
I have things to say on this too, and Ken also has. So I'm going to try to be really quick. And here's the thing. Metadata is very, very important. And the way that I define metadata is data about other data. There's lots of ways of looking at it. So a lot of the things you're talking about, Tess, is about metadata. How does the system know that is that, or what that is, right? The amazing thing about XR is you cannot have XR without metadata, because once you have something in space, you no longer have plain text. It can't be. It has to be rendered somehow, and it has to have a location, an angle, a size, and a color. All of that has to be known by the system. If that is removed going out of XR and coming back in again, it has to be arbitrarily placed, right? So one of the great promises of XR is metadata, whether it's in XR or not. I'm going to show you something really quickly. So here's author. Yes, obviously I sell it to you as much as I can. In author, you guys are contributing articles. So the system needs to know who wrote what article. So if you have a heading, you can command click on it, you get these options. And here I can put Tess, for instance, boom. Now whatever is after this heading will be tagged on export as written by Tess. Reason for that is if it's exported to a PDF and someone copies as a citation, it is citing you and I'm the editor because I made the document, right? So here's the cool thing. We've just added this. We have some notes that is just for the author to write, oh, I need to fix this section, it's awful. But we also have this, and this is entirely arbitrary. It's a topics list. So if we analyze each article that you guys are writing using our own judgment, LLMs, so who cares? We paste it in here. Now, Tess and Jonathan, from what you're saying, one thing we could do is assign time values to chapters. Mm-hmm. Right? So that means that a glossary can have progressive disclosure if it knows how far in what chapter or location you have reached. So all of this is quite obvious, but what is, just to repeat and finish before I hand it over to Ken, the magic of XR is that finally metadata is a first-class citizen. It's not some nonsense you put on later. And I would say, finally, that one of the great things behind this is social media like Facebook, because people have become used to tagging people in their pictures. That's obviously metadata. It's become part of our culture to do that. So to have an author say, these are the things explicitly as they write, and to have a system that can digest this and present it to the reader makes amazing opportunities.
Yeah.
Ken, I'm so sorry.
Just very briefly, I just wanted to say, I love the fact that Tess said, I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page, that we're still drawing on metaphors from books, even with all this new technology. For some reason, that makes me very happy. That's all.
I'd like to just add on to that, Ken. It makes me happy too, partly because text is going to go all over the place, but most of it's going to need a bit of traditional. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, as it were. So next week we have a theme discussion on spatial information. I think we can consider that a direct continuation of today. And I thank you all for being here. And if you have any kind of a dream for what writing or reading should do, send it to me. We'll have a section in the book on tiny quotes. You know, we've had it before, so don't think you have to write a lot. And yeah, thank you again. Thank you, Tess. Thank you, everybody. Bye for now.
Thanks a lot. Have a great week.
It's 1 o'clock.